Thank you, ladies, for being here. I'm so thrilled. You are doing with your hard candy and fruit snacks and talking about race and your childhood. Was it 11 years old that you met?
Actually first grade, so it's
Yeah, so
younger than
probably like
that.
6 or 7.
Six or
Yeah.
seven. Wow, I listened to 8 of your podcasts and I
Oh,
messed that up. I'm so sorry.
That's
no.
okay.
But I love the idea of what you're doing is and talking about race because we need to be doing this every day. And so very few people do it. And I don't think that talking about race is particularly fun and appealing to me, but I have to. And Gloria, you have to, and Carrie, you don't have to. So
Right. This is true. This is true. So Carrie, right? It comes back to her like, Carrie, why are you doing this?
yeah,
Why
yeah,
are you
yeah,
doing this?
yeah. Go, Carrie.
I mean, you know, it's exactly what you said. Like, no one wants to talk about it. It's uncomfortable. And I think, like, I struggle in my life about everything, like doing the wrong thing, or whatever. And so I never want to say or do the wrong thing. And I think that's kind of what happened, like, last year when Black Lives Matter kind of erupted and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and all of that. I just found myself like wanting to do the right thing, whatever that means. And I know there's no right or wrong, but that's just how my twisted brain works. And I wanted to be an ally. I didn't know what to do. I remember there was this whole thing on social media with people being like, you want to black out your screen in solidarity. And then other people saying, no, don't do that because we want to amplify Black voices, not mute Black voices. And so finally I was like, you know what, I'm going to call Gloria. And like, we've known each other forever, but we were definitely not like, we maybe talk like once a year, like Christmas cards or something like that. And I'm like, I'm just going to call her. And so we started talking. And I mean,
Okay,
Gloria
okay,
kind of
pause.
pick up.
Okay, pause. Okay, Gloria,
Yes.
when you got this call, what happened?
So when I got this call, first of all, I was so excited to talk to Carrie, to catch up, to see how our families were doing. All of that was good until she got to the point where she said, listen, I want to talk about what's going on in this country. And then I know the conversation started to shift for me emotionally, right? And mentally, because I was so excited to talk to her. But then I was like, I'm not trying to go there. I'm not trying to go there. And she was like, I wondered if you and I could chat. I said, Carrie, it's so good to catch up with you. So good to connect. Let me give it some thought and, I'll be back in touch with you. And I hung up and I was so nice and so cordial. And I hung up. I said, girl, bye. No, I don't want to talk about this. I talked to my family. They were like, listen, it sounds really nice what she's trying to do, but, it's really painful. Like, do you really want to go there? And I said, you know what? Actually, I don't want to go there. You know why? It hurts too much.
Mhm.
It hurts too much to talk about what's going on in this country. So I called Carrie back a couple days later. I said, hey, girl. She said, hi. We chatted. And I said, listen, I really appreciate you reaching out to me because it meant a lot to me. It still does to this day. But I thought at that point in my life, I wasn't ready to talk about what it meant for us to have a conversation, what it meant for us to have a brave space. Because you said, Gloria, what were you doing? What was your reaction? I was literally laying on the couch when she called me. I'll never forget it. I've been watching the news. I've been crying about what was going on because there were two pandemics we were going through. There were two crises in America for me as a Black woman, right? Going through what was happening to Black lives and watching Black men being killed repeatedly. And then we were looking at the coronavirus and Black people and Black and brown people dying at a large number. So I said, I got enough on my plate. I got to tell my son to be careful when he leaves the house. I got to worry about my two daughters that I'm raising. So I said, Carrie, thank you again. I'm just going to pass, and maybe in the future we can chat about it. And she said, okay. And a couple days later, she called me again. And we had the same conversation and we kept going back and forth.
Okay,
and
okay. Let me just butt in here. So Carrie, when after that you ended that first, when Gloria said, oh, not right now,
Yeah.
how did you react to that?
I mean, I totally understood, and obviously it's a more loaded topic for her in a way, especially because the spotlight was on Black Americans. And I know that Black Americans were obviously reacting to the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of that much harder than a white American. I'm still sort of on the outside and, guessing what that would feel like, you know? And I also now subsequently know that a lot of Black, especially females, felt like their white friends were doing the same thing, like kind of calling them, and that there was like this onus on Black people to like take care of their white friends and like make them feel better or something. And that was never what I meant to do. I sincerely was just like, I have a Black friend that I've known forever. And if there's ever someone that I feel like I could talk to about this and who could set me straight and maintain that friendship, I mean, we've known each other for too long for like one phone call to make her totally change her impression of me, you know? But I wasn't like, my goal wasn't for us to have a podcast. My goal was like, just to talk about it. And if it could be, if this was going to be interesting, and Gloria will talk about this too, but like I was more interested in her. So I was like, would this be interesting for me to talk to you about your past? One-sided. And then Gloria finally was like, no, it's not about me, it's about us, and you have a story in this too, you know. But I was, and that was also, remember the whole Karen thing. I'm like, we don't need to hear from another white woman, like, you know.
Right. And like she said, though, it was bigger than that. I said, Carrie, in order for us to have a real conversation, she's right. She wanted to interview me. And I don't know if I've ever told her this. I was very offended by that. I'm like, you want to interview me? You want me to be a guest? Hell no. We need to talk about what's really going on in this country. In order for us to really have a conversation, we have to talk about your white privilege. We have to talk about where you came from, not your fault. We have to talk about me being born into a disadvantaged situation, not my fault, but a reality. And so Carrie was struggling with that. She was like, yeah, they don't want to hear from me. They don't want to hear from white America. They don't want to hear about how I grew up. I said, oh, hell yeah. We need to hear about it because your privilege speaks to my disadvantage if we're going to talk about it. Otherwise, I'm not interested in it. So that was where I was coming from. I was like, Carrie, I wanted her to realize that her story was important. And she really wanted to just, and I get now what she was trying to do was focus on me, but I said, it's not going to work. I said, unless you want to talk about both situations, I don't think I can do it. And then after turning her down again, right, I'll tell you what some of my family members were saying. They were like, listen, is your friend experiencing white guilt? Like, does your friend need to see a therapist? I was like, no, she don't need to see no therapist. She's good. They're like, no, seriously, she's asking you to like, bring up stuff that you've forgotten about as a child. And I said, you know what? After thinking about it more and more, I realized that Carrie knows a lot of people. I know a lot of people. And I said, imagine if the two of us could figure out a way to talk about race from our perspectives, what it was like for me and my family, what it was like for her. What was she told about Black people? What was I told about white people? What did I learn as a child? And how do we come together? And that's where we came up with this brave space. In this space, ask me what you want. In this space, I'm going to ask you what I want. What I've learned about Carrie is that we actually have a lot more in common than I realized. And I realize that she is about it. She is about the fight. She is about helping to bring us all together. And I'm so glad that I made the decision to say yes when there are a lot of people in my ear telling me all the reasons why I shouldn't do it. All the reasons why I shouldn't do it and that I can't fix it for her. And then she expressed to me, like she said, Gloria, I don't want to be looked at as a Karen. I worry about some of the things I say. I said, imagine how I feel if I get too excited. If I talk like this from my soul, I could be looked at as an angry Black woman. I don't want that either. So we said, you know what? Together, thinking about our childhood, thinking about where we came from, and understanding each other's differences, let's find this brave space. So that's where we're at today, bringing people together and not only talking about Black and white issues, but what's happening in the Latin community, what's happening with Asian Americans. Like, we realize that there's a problem in this country that's bigger than just Black or white.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where we're at in this brave space. We thank you so much for reaching out to us because we want you to know that we care about what's going on with Asian Americans. We have friends too, and we feel what they're going through. And some of my Asian American friends, by the way, also reached out to me and said, Gloria, I feel bad about what's going on in this country when it comes to the way Black Americans are treated. And I don't know, it's something about this last year. It's something about 2020. It's something about the pandemic. It's something about all of these protests and young people coming together and saying, guess what? We are tired.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging us to keep going. When you say this is not a fun topic, it's not.
Right.
It's exhausting. There are days where we're just like, it's hard. This is hard work we're putting in.
And Carrie,
But I think the three of us,
yeah.
like all three of us are sort of like wanting, to bring people together and like, cause I know you've struggled with that too, like in Seattle and just finding allies and like, anything we can do to help. But I do think that there are people from all races that like do want to help each other, and of course there's people that don't, and those ones seem to get the magnifying glass, right? Like we know about the white supremacists or whatever, but not all white people are like that, I don't know. So if we can help you in any way too, I mean,
And that's what I'm learning too. If enough of us, like what we're doing now, enough of us continue to do this, we can grow this thing. If enough of us say we are tired and enough of us can publicly begin to denounce, guess what? It's no longer going to be acceptable. Just like the white
yeah,
supremacists, they're winning. How are they winning? We need the same type of power.
yeah.
Yes, 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 and yes. I'm like, that's the dream, ladies.
Yes.
So I'm pleased to have found you. So
Likewise.
Carrie,
Yes.
what was your concern, or what, both concern? Talk about your concern about doing this show, your show.
You mean the hesitation? Well, like I
Yeah.
honestly just sort of, I think I had in my head in the beginning, like the amplify Black voices, and I'm like, we do not need to hear from another white woman, and in no way am I a Karen, but I still just had that in my head. I'm like, we don't need that. We've seen enough John Hughes movies or whatever. Like, we don't need any more time with the white woman, and but because of what Gloria said, like she was right, and it has made me reflect on white privilege, and that's like a hard thing to admit, and that's a hard road to go down, because like I now understand that like just because you have white privilege, it doesn't mean that you haven't had hardships, but you don't have a hardship because of the color of your skin, which you two both do, right? Like you guys wake up in the morning and think about your race. I don't, and that in itself is white privilege, and I hadn't really focused on that and focused on just the differences of things that I don't have to think about that you both have to think about, and so that's been a struggle, but also so eye-opening, and like I love that I've been able to reflect on that. And I think like race, just another hesitation is it's scary, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, and people get so angry if you use, I used the term minority and we're not supposed to use minority anymore and stuff like that. And I know that like Gloria is not just going to like hang up the phone on me because I used the wrong term, and I'm not saying like racial slur. I don't mean like that, because then she should hang up the phone on me. But just like, there's just stuff in educating, and if I say something that's incorrect, I want someone to call me out on it. And I wish that other people could be called out on it too, but I think we tiptoe around, and like we did 2 episodes about ask a white person, ask a Black person, and people are scared to put on social media like the questions that they have for us, but they'll text us, and because like people want to know stuff, and if we could be the venue for people to ask these questions and get over some of these hesitations, like, I mean, I didn't know it was a racial thing about that white people don't use washcloths, but I guess that's a thing.
Right. And then we learn too, it can be racial, right? It depends on also like when someone asks a question, can you touch a Black person's hair? I'm not a spokesperson for Black people, but as
Right,
a Black woman, I'm saying don't touch my hair. Like
right,
if you like it, just say you like it. You don't need to make it a discussion and a meeting. You don't need to prolong it for like an hour and a half about how long it took to do my braids, because you don't give a damn. Like, let's just stop it, right? Don't make me a topic of discussion for your laughter. Like, we
right.
don't like that. I don't like that. So there were questions in there that, right, we knew that people think about all the time, but they found in our brave space, they were able to ask us,
Right.
so
I love that, because I also this is, by the way, I'm just 40 days in. And so my feeling like a minority is really just 40 days in.
oh,
So
wow, okay.
I've been completely privileged with everything all the time until 40 days ago. So,
But so
So
you
what
didn't,
happened 40 days ago? Tell me the specific thing that sparked this.
oh, well, after Atlanta, so I knew that I'm here in Seattle and there are a lot of Asians. We are number 3, or were on the Stop AAPI Hate on all the harassments, et cetera. We were number 3 in Washington State. However, I think things have changed. I mean, a lot has happened just in the last couple months.
Right.
So I knew there were things going on, like with Asian hate, but you barely hear about it. It doesn't make national news. And it was probably in Chinatown in San Francisco or New York. And so it's like so far away, and like, yeah, that sucks to be Asian, but what are you going to do? But after Atlanta, then there's a spotlight. And so then the news is covering it. And then there were 5 more incidents that made the big news. And then I said, you know what? All right, the news is on it right now. Let me activate, let me learn. And I grew up, I was listening to your podcast, and my community is whiter than yours. Lauren Martin was the only Black kid in my elementary school, I think.
Wow.
And there were a few Asians, but mine was whiter than yours. And so after Atlanta, I decided, all right, let me dive in. And my network out here in Seattle is 98% white, like my personal one. When I moved over to be a professional speaker, was very involved in the National Speakers Association. It was very white. And so, and I'm a hard worker. And so I get all in. And so poof, my Asian network is kind of gone, because that's all effort somewhere else. And so you asked me, how do I plug in? Well, I'm like, all right, well, what's happening? What's happening here? What are the Asian American news sources? Oh, there are some. Okay. Let me get on Nextshark. Let me look at Asian American news. Let me join some Asian groups. What are people saying? And if I'm speaking out, wow, I'm Japanese, Chinese, and Swedish. I'm 4th generation. And,
Wow.
I don't like seafood.
Yeah.
I don't use chopsticks. I only speak English. Who am I representing? Well, me. Do I have other things in common with other Asian Americans? And so indeed, so I'm like studying. Yes. Oh yeah. And so, and hearing, I'm on this group with 13,000 other Asian Americans. And somebody said, hey, just a temperature check out there.
Wow.
Has any of your friends reached out to you, after Atlanta? And it's like, no. And then there were people who are few. Oh, my Jewish friend. Oh, my gay friend. My Black friend. No white friends. And like,
Wow.
and just constantly, I'm like, oh my gosh, me too. And people are really sad about it. And so I would listen to all these things that people are saying, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I am not alone. And also I didn't have any Asians I could call. I called up, I'm like, Asians, Asian friends who I could call. and so I called up my, I had a radio show with my friend Eileen, who's Filipino. I haven't talked to her for like 10 years. I called her, I'm like, Eileen. She's like, Jolene, what? And I'm like, I need a safe voice that I can talk to, because she's more of an activist, and so she lives in this world.
Yeah.
Because with Asian Americans, try so hard to be accepted. And so for them to say anything about Stop Asian Hate, it makes them an other. And so a lot of them, there's no evidence of anything about it. And so I don't feel safe, actually, because people know that I'm in it. I've changed all my profiles to Stop Asian Hate, and this is all I'm doing. And so I don't want to press any Asians to do anything unless they want to, because it's complicated.
Yeah.
So I've
that's it.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized that. Like, we were talking to a different Eileen on our show, and I didn't realize that it's not very of like the Asian culture to kind of like speak up and protest like that. And she was kind of saying the same thing, that people were just like accepting what was going on, and I think like the Black culture is different in that way, right? Like, so I bet this is, a lot of people are so conflicted in the Asian community about how to deal with.
Yeah, but you know what? I want to tell you, I'm proud of you, because this road that you're traveling, it's lonely, and I'm emotional listening to you, right? To be on with 13,000 people and to have them respond. And I hope that if white people are listening, understand that we need you just like we need everybody on this call, just like we need Carrie. We just had an event and I cried after. I looked at all the people that were on it. You know what I said? They said the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's where African-American, Black community, that's where I was raised, a village, a community, everyone to raise a child. Well, we are doing this with this podcast and giving 4 scholarships to inner city kids from Boston. We are doing it too with the village, and our village looks different. Our village is that of white and Black people coming together, people that are from like middle class, lower income to very wealthy on this event. Bright, Carrie knows I was so proud of all the people that I could bring together, that Carrie could bring together. And we could say, listen, if enough of us do it, and it is scary, it is lonely, but we need to stand up for each other and say, you know what, when you see someone on the subway and you see them being treated badly, don't just pull out your camera and videotape it. Call the police. Try to do something to help them. And for too long, and like you said, you didn't hear a lot of white people saying that Asian Americans saying that their white friends, reached out to them. So maybe they're like what Carrie was in the beginning. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what my other colleagues were saying. And I'm saying to you on this right now, we need you. We need you, because together, if we can all begin to start to have the conversation, you know what it is? It'll be to the point where you're outnumbered if you don't join in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We need to get to a point where we're like that, and we're not like that yet. But the fact that you've made it your profile, that this has become your mission, trust me, you're going to find more Carries and Glorias. You're going to find more people to say, you know what? We just didn't know how to do it. Thank you for this. You've given us courage,
Yeah.
to start. Because it's not easy. And I say this to Carrie, she doesn't like when I do it, but I don't know what the road's like for her. I still get people to say, is your friend really genuine in what she's doing? Like, do you, and I'm like, I don't need to worry about them because I know she is. I've already gotten past that.
I
So
love
the people
that I would have like an ulterior motive.
right, exactly. And what could it be? I don't even know, but it's because people are, you know what it is? People are comfortable with, you'll find this, and I found it in my life. They're comfortable with me being a certain way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, she's married, she's got her kids. Yeah, it's like, yeah, they like you a certain way, but when you start to climb a different way, when you start to take a right and they're used to you taking a left, they're going to be like, oh, what is she up to? You know what I mean? And it's easy to say, oh, they won't be able to do it. They won't raise $60,000. They won't give the social justice scholarship. We're doing it.
Right.
You're doing it. You're reaching out to us. And I say the road, like I said, is very serious. And for people listening, it's lonely, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our conversations we have are late at night, and most of Americans are sleeping. You know what I mean? Her kids sleep, her husband sleep, my kids are asleep, my husband, and I'm in this little booth having this conversation about how I want us to start treating each other like we would want to be treated. Basic fundamentals in life.
Mm-hmm.
Treat somebody like you want to be treated. Don't think you're better because you were born into white privilege. Don't think your life has more value.
Mm-hmm.
And also we got to fix mental health in this country. Look what's happening in New York. And the statistics are saying 150% increase in California and New York of attacks on Asian Americans. And you know what breaks my heart? Some of them are mentally challenged, disturbed Black men that are attacking Asian people. And I said, you know what? They are not getting the resources they need. Because guess what? Anybody who knows about making this world a better place, you're not going to just go up and hit someone in their head for nothing.
Right.
Because we had a president that provoked racism and separatism and divisiveness. I know better than that, even though he tried to set us back for generations. But
Right.
what about the people that,
does.
that's what I'm saying. And what about the people that don't have the resources? Yeah. And so when you're putting on the media, another Black man attacks an Asian woman, you are dividing these two minority groups once again. And that is what the white supremacist wants.
Right.
That is what people want to hear. See, Black and Asian people don't get along. They hate each other. There's some history behind that, but we've come a long way. And so these conversations I know can help say, you know what? That's not true. That's not true. And not everybody thinks the way this guy or this woman who's mentally disturbed. I just saw one the other day, literally in tears. I go to bed with this. The girl's, I believe she's Filipino. Her mother didn't want her to come to New York. She came, she's walking with her friend to the train station, and a woman hit her in the head with a hammer. And it was a Black woman. And I was in tears. I'm like, you know better. but I also got a little history on that woman. She is homeless. She is mentally disturbed. So when you put it on the media, tell everything that's going on.
Right.
Because all it is further dividing us.
Well,
Right.
I'd also say the thing is, like, if that woman attacked a white woman, she'd be dead. You know, like she'd be shot on the spot.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And so the
absolutely.
thing is, like, where do people put their anger? Well, Asians, it doesn't really matter because even if they get caught, they get let off. And so, yeah, it is tough. And I would say, like, just in May, so it's Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and
Mhm.
just the 1st through the 5th. The other one that was really difficult to see was this guy took a brick to these 2 Korean ladies and bashed their heads. They are alive, but and then just you know, a man beat up this guy in a baby stroller with his baby, so his baby's like rolling. You kind of see this, and just there's just you saw the 85-year-old and the 65-year-old who were stabbed, and it's just like just
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
in 5 days. And the thing is, I do post a lot of this, but my network is not doesn't want to see it, you know, because I'm the fun specialist. I'm the fun
Right.
person who's out there doing fun things. And so now it's like, oh, Jolene, you've changed. You need
Yep.
to see a therapist. You're angry.
Yes.
No, but you're bringing attention to something because it's like even those ones that you just said, I hadn't heard about all of
Yeah.
them, but also I'm one of those people who like it gets to be so much. Like last year I couldn't watch, I just had to stop watching the news because it was just like it's so much. It's and I don't know that that's the best reaction because I know you have to take care of yourself, but it's also like you can't pretend it doesn't exist. And I
Yeah.
fault myself for that, because definitely like my day is going to be better if I don't know that 2 women got their heads bashed in with a
Mm.
brick,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
think it's like it's one thing if because so many people look away because they can. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect them.
Mhm.
And I don't love to look at these videos or to share them, but people aren't looking at them. And it's like I don't love talking about race or murder, but it's
right.
there. And unless I talk about it, nobody's going to know about it because these are not covered on mainstream media. And
Yeah.
so I need to share them so then other people can see them and realize, no, this is every single day.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm
No, but I
wondering,
think
go ahead.
that's so good that you're doing it because I think it does need to have a spotlight. And I think like in my circle, like my, social media circle or whatever, like there are so many people who have posted Stop Asian Hate and who've posted, places to donate or things to do to help being proactive. And that's like helped me and just opened my eye. And I have some pretty prominent Asian friends like in that community, which is totally, and that's why we were like, not that we can impact a lot, but just from if we can do one episode about it, I mean, we should do more, but just like at least to give some voice and spotlight to it in our little effort that we can. But
I say Carrie, Gloria, even one person more is a
yeah,
big deal because
Yeah.
like for Asians, it is so ignored.
yeah.
So one person to even like, oh, is that happening? I'm like, oh my gosh, one person might,
And it was also helpful that our Asian American friends shared their stories.
yes,
Like
that
they
was
were
a
so
powerful one.
willing to,
Yeah.
and they thanked us for like providing this space. And honestly, we could have talked for another 3 hours,
Yeah.
but of course we had to cut it down. But they were powerful things that I didn't even know
And
about,
that was
Mhm.
heartbreaking because we like reached out to to everyone that the voices that you hear on that podcast are all our friends, right?
Yeah.
So we reached out to our Asian friends and we're just like, if you have a story about Asian hate that you could share. And like it was heartbreaking. The things that I heard. One friend of mine, who's a friend of mine from college, I mean, she sent me like 7 stories and some that happened to her when we were in college together and I never knew about them, and one story that's on the podcast is another friend who said, her mom gave her sunglasses basically to hide her identity. And that's like a really close friend of mine. And I had no idea. And it just makes me want to cry because I'm like, the fact that you have to think like that, that you're
Oh
trying
yeah.
to, cover up who you are is just heartbreaking. And to what you're doing and what you're saying, like, that's our little way of amplifying those stories. But I think it's also a cultural thing that they're not out there like tweeting that that's this thing that happened to them or whatever, and it just breaks my heart because I honestly had no idea. And I think of myself as being like, somewhat woke and whatever, but like I had no idea that these are my close friends that are struggling so hard, and haven't shared these stories,
But
and it's
also my couple of my family members, um, they have married other people that are Asian American, and I thought, oh, I could get them to do a soundbite. They said, absolutely not. They want nothing to do with mainstream media if it doesn't involve their job. And I was really surprised because I'm like, okay, I know you. I know my family member, but a lot of people, like you said, they are private and they don't know that this is going to do anything but maybe make it worse for their lives. So they chose not to, but they stand and they appreciate us and they appreciate what we're doing, but they said they could not be, they couldn't express themselves publicly. They didn't feel like they could, and that's sad.
yeah,
And yeah, and welcome. And that's why I'm reaching outside of my network,
yeah,
Yep.
outside, because the only ones I know are the activists. And so they do this work, but it is really, really difficult. I want to do several series of called Why Are People Silent around Stop Asian Hate, and have the Black perspective, Gloria, and
Yes.
Carrie White perspective, and then the Asian perspective. It is so complicated.
yeah.
Hmm.
I think I'm going to do a diagram of what I've learned, of all the reasons that people don't talk and all the obstacles.
And
So
also,
yeah, go
mhm,
ahead.
good. I also think too, like Carrie and I talked about generational, like
Yeah.
where we came from when I was growing up, if I didn't like something going on in my job, I kind of just talked to my family about it and I would suck it up. Right. My children, the next generation, I love, there's something different happening and they're speaking up and they're coming together and they're becoming more unified, and that's why I'm hopeful about tomorrow, for all of us. I'm hopeful about diversity and inclusion because enough people are not doing what I used to do and what I was taught and what my parents were taught to do. You know what I mean? As a Black American, like, you don't want to make a problem at your job because you'll probably get let go. You don't want to speak up on something. You don't want to start something that's not a part of something that's already created because you will be looked down on. And
Yeah.
it's funny what happened, like I said, in 2020, looking at everything that was going on in this country, Carrie contacted me and I started to look at myself in the mirror and I said, you know what? I'm tired also.
Right.
And I don't care anymore. I don't owe anybody anything. If you're not for me, you don't want to help us, move and get out the way.
Sounds familiar.
Yes, because we've got too much work to do, right? So that's where I'm at. I hit a certain age and I was like, you know what? I don't really care. If I lose a few friends along the way, I don't care if a few family members don't speak to me. I don't care if I can help make tomorrow a little bit better, than my life is worth living. And that's where I'm at. It's like, I was crying and in this bubble by myself and here my white friend, and she contacted me. I was like, I can't even fix what's going on in my head. I can't help you. And really one day I said to her, I said, Carrie, what do you want from me? Like, I can't help you. I don't even know how to help myself. She's like, let's just talk about it. And here we are. We're just talking about it. And it was,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. So what advice do you have for, let's kind of let Carrie tell me about how you are able to communicate with like the white following. Like, how are you able to uh frame things that is digestible? Because I have a very thin filter. However, I realized the other day I was going to post something, but I like took the word white out. I'm like, I can't say the
Mhm.
word white because white is so like, oh, you just said white. What's it about race?
Right.
And so, so I was thinking about using white lens. I was trying to soften it, but how are you communicating with your white friends to be able to soften? And then we'll ask Gloria as well.
To soften,
To get
like, what do you mean?
so
Just,
people can hear you. Because if
yeah,
I were to say white or white fragility, it's already, that's a bunch of garbage. There's no systemic racism. And why is it always about race? And so the word white is triggering, and white fragility. Are you kidding me?
mhm. I don't know. And I don't know if I've mastered it. I think that, I definitely like just take ownership. I'm not so worried about labeling everyone else, but I know now that I have white privilege and what that means, but I can't like impose that on someone else. But I think like just to be able to say that, like in our podcast or in our discussions, we talk about privilege and disadvantage. Like, I don't even think I could have used those words, because I would also, for me, it's like that makes me feel guilty, like labeling Gloria as disadvantaged, because obviously, like, Gloria as a human is not disadvantaged. She's the most amazing person, but she came from a disadvantaged background, just economics alone, or just like societal alone, you know. But still, that makes me cringe. Like, why am I saying, like, because that makes me sound better, like that I'm the privileged one and she's the
Yeah.
disadvantaged one. And so that's like, I hate that. But then I also feel like, but it's true. It doesn't mean that I'm a better person than her in any way. But like Gloria was saying at the beginning, like that, those were just the circumstances that we were
Yeah.
born into. And that's what's been interesting, just reflecting about our past, that it's like, you know, Gloria was part of this busing program, and it was presented to us, the white kids, like, this is an amazing thing that we're letting these kids come into our great school to get an education they would never have gotten. And so that's how it was presented to me.
Yeah.
So I automatically, that puts me above her, right? Just the way that it's presented, I'm better, and I'm doing this amazing thing by giving her this opportunity. So it already started with a warped relationship. But just to be able to reflect on that and understand why it was presented that way, and whether it's true or false, and really who's, you know, we talk about, we end up randomly in our 20s working at the same job for the same salary. And what does that say? You know, like, maybe that privilege and disadvantage equalized for a minute. Maybe it didn't. You know, Gloria thinks that for a long time thought I got that place differently than I did, you know. But anyway, I think just to be able to like have ownership to those words, and for me to be able to like say, like, I do have white privilege. That's like a hard thing to say and admit, and it makes me feel terrible. But so I don't even know if that's answering your question, but I just think like taking responsibility for things that maybe you don't have control over, I think helps, you know. And I don't know, if someone posts something about white lens, it just makes me realize, like, yes, we have stuff to do. And yes, there is a white lens. And yes, there is white privilege. And yes, the three of us don't have the same experiences through the day solely because of the color of our skin, you know? But I don't know. I don't have the answer of how to deal, how I present to white people. I don't know. And I'm sure there's some people that are like, why are you wasting your time? Why are you doing this? Live your white privilege life or whatever, you know? But I mean, for me, I have thoroughly enjoyed having these discussions, even though they're hard and even though they make me feel guilty. They do. I don't know if it's white guilt or just guilt in general, you know, but I don't know. I don't know if that answers it.
I think it does. And I also think you don't have to specifically say what other white people should do. You
Yeah.
are using your life as an example, and that will encourage other people to start to begin to take baby steps. And that's really what the goal is of the podcast, right? To bring people together and start as we did with baby steps. You know, we grew up together, so there was some familiarity there, and that helped us. But you too can do it. You can do it on your job. You can do it in your neighborhood. You can start taking one day at a time with a simple phone call. Hey, I just want to check in and say, you know, I was thinking about you. Is there anything that I could do? And sometimes you don't always have to have, there's not a right or wrong answer. And what I told Carrie is like, tell your white friends, okay, if they're thinking about this, stop thinking about what do I say? Stop
Yeah.
thinking about, is she going to get angry at me? Stop thinking about, am I going to say the right thing? How about, hey, just wanted to know, I was thinking about you. Give me a call back when you get a chance. Just a simple thing. It starts with a simple conversation, and naturally the conversation will go from there.
Mhm.
Right now. So that's what Carrie's doing. What I'm doing is trying to convince my family members and friends and colleagues, Black Americans who've been hurt for so long, who rightfully so have a huge distrust in our country and the ability to be treated fairly, that I'm taking one step at a time with my childhood friend, and I am opening up my heart to her. And she is opening up her heart to me. And we know that not everybody is going to agree with us, but we are taking one step at a time to try to make this world a better place. And for us, it was important to take our meaningful conversations and give back. And so we started right in the inner city of Boston. And so in June of 2021, Next month, we're going to be awarding 4 scholarships to 4 teenagers from the inner city of Boston. And I talk about that, Jolene. It's so important because that's what I'm talking about, where I say Black Americans have very little trust and they think that we're just on here talking. And I said to Carrie, we can talk meaningful conversations, but what are we doing to put this in action? What are we doing? So we agreed that trying to pay it forward, right? Starting with 4 students was a way that we could say, you know what? In talking about systemic racism and talking about privilege and talking about disadvantage, what are some ways that we could try to do to help these kids that are from the same neighborhoods that Gloria grew up in, that come from nothing? And we're saying together, we're coming together to try to give you a little step. It's not going to pay for their college, but $10,000 per student, it could help them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so as we grow this, we're thinking about not only just inner city kids from Boston, but other kids. Who else is disadvantaged? What else can we do to make it bigger? So how I'm convincing Black Americans is taking a chance through me and looking at my life as I trust my white friend, my white privileged friend, who has come to the table and said, listen, I acknowledge my white privilege. And I told her that was the first step. You have to acknowledge that the way we came into this world was not even. And I think it made Carrie uncomfortable, made me uncomfortable because I
Yeah.
don't like to be called disadvantaged.
Yeah.
Jolie, I'm so rich in my spirit, girl.
Right.
It's so crazy. Like I have so much money, not financially,
Right.
but money that you can't buy. And
Right.
that spirit and love. And so I don't like to be called disadvantaged.
No.
But if I can meet my friend at the table and she can say, all right, let's come together and do something for the greater good that we can be proud of, that we can put our name on. And,
Right.
and like we said, we're surprised that so many people have started listening to the podcast. So many people have donated to the cause. You know what I mean? And so it starts with the conversation. It starts with using your life as an example and taking baby steps. And sometimes we agree on stuff, sometimes we don't. But one thing I can be clear about is that we respect each other.
Yeah.
And that, I don't always agree with some of the things she says or vice versa, but we know that we want to help leave this place a little better off than where we started. And to me, that is something that is priceless. I will cherish for the rest of my life. And to know that I can touch somebody. And I'll be honest, I don't just talk to Black people, by the way. I got a lot of white friends too. And I got a lot of white friends that say, guess what? I'm not privileged like Carrie. I mean, I'm white and I have some privilege, but Carrie's privilege. So I'm like, listen, if you're white, privilege is privilege as far as
Right.
I'm concerned.
Right.
But what I'm saying to you is Carrie too. She has Black friends. We have a lot of different friends. And that's why I was excited. A lot of different people coming together. And like she said, there are going to be people that just don't believe in this, don't think we need to be doing this, think she should just stay in her white privilege. And I should just keep on trying to help, disadvantage on my own. But I'm like, nah, I'm about that village, that modern day village
Right.
that looks different, that represents what the world looks like today in order to get things done. I cannot do it without the help of allies.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
can't do it.
Yes. And
Right.
yes, yes, yes. And can you give us some of the feedback that you've received from the show?
I mean, obviously, a lot of positive feedback. I think what's interesting for me is I get a lot of white people sort of like using me to get to Gloria, sort of like, could you ask Gloria about this thing, or
Oh,
like,
yeah. Sure.
stuff like that, like, because I don't think that everyone has a Gloria in my white friends. And and people we've talked a lot about like how Gloria has to have different conversations at her dinner table than I do, because I don't have to warn my son about like getting pulled over or things like that. And then people have asked me, well, like, how can we talk about race at the dinner table? And like, I'm no expert, I don't know. And I know that there's books about that and speakers to talk about that. I have my own opinions, but I think that that's just been interesting, that people that like we went to high school with, but weren't necessarily friends with, but they've reached out and just like wanting to, can you ask Gloria this thing? Or can you guys talk about this? We'd love to hear your opinion on this. Like, I just think that we've gotten people talking and commenting, which is amazing,
And you know what else we've gotten, Carrie? And I mentioned this to you. We know a lot of people on our like Facebook, LinkedIn, where people work in human resources, right? They've contacted me. I mean, I'm talking paragraphs. Dear Gloria, thank you so much for opening up to Carrie. I'm now relooking my hiring process at my corporation. I'm looking at how, because I talked to Carrie about, don't just talk about diversity and inclusion. You're going to bring us in, but don't give us the tools to succeed. Don't allow me to have a seat at the table without giving me the tools to advance. It makes no sense. So we talk about that. And I didn't realize how many people have been listening from a lot of different industries that say, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for the conversation that you guys are having. I didn't know that, maybe we ought to try to look at more managers in diversity before also hiring diversity. Because if you have a board that looks like Carrie, and you have someone like you or me that interview, you know nothing about us, and you want us to conform, let's stop doing that. Let's say, okay, what is it that Gloria brings to the table that could help us benefit in this company?
Mhm.
What is it that Jolene had? What is it, instead of saying, we want you to be like us? If we could change our mindset, I mean, imagine where corporations would be today. So
Mhm.
we're definitely inspiring those kind of conversations as well. I know that we're impacting people so much so that we would do a grassroots. I hate to keep bringing up the scholarship fund, but we're raising money for people just listening to us and saying, hey, if we could be a part of breaking the cycle, if we could be a part of helping to, bridge the gap, here's $25, here's $1,000. And
Mhm.
I'm like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
So it's
and
working.
yes, and yes, and yes. And I would, for the
I love it.
scholarship
Mm.
winners or even the other applicants, I would like to see them doing some running some brave spaces. I'm doing an
Yes.
interview in an hour or so with 16 and 17-year-olds,
Oh, cool.
Asian
Mm.
students, and they're talking about what it is to grow up Asian and what it is now. And um, being able to talk about this and have other people listen, because so very often people were not asked, and we're not listened to, and if so, it's like, yeah, big deal, somebody called you a name, who cares? And so I would love to see your scholarship people, at their schools or whatever they're doing, start running these smaller brave spaces.
Maybe
Yeah,
in the
that's
future we can connect them all with you, students that you have. Maybe we could
Yeah,
yeah.
try something like that. That would be awesome.
I want to
yeah.
listen. I want to listen to what the talk that you're about to record, because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking because I'm spilling with privilege, and I wasn't teased as an Asian, even though I was in a white community. But I think I'm one of the very few who
Yeah.
was in a white community um, who wasn't. And so there's a thing called self-hatred for Asians, and just trying to distance yourself so far. And a lot of these young women shared about what that is, and it's fascinating, but also people can understand, okay, name calling is a little bit deeper than,
Hmm.
or when I can't pronounce your name or don't even try, let me just give you a nickname. Can I just call you Chris? And
Right. Oh
Yeah.
my
so
gosh.
just hearing, and this is not, these are 16-year-olds. So this is happening now. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So I know, Carrie, you have a meeting coming up. And then uh next time, I do this whole thing about why are people silent. I think that is a great topic to discuss together.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the situations, let me just real quick, just to plant the seed here. So
Yeah.
yesterday I talked to a resident here in the suburb of Seattle, and he and his wife, they're both Asian, took their baby and in their stroller, and the neighbor in this truck came at him and didn't run them off, but 4 inches from the stroller.
Mm.
And it's like, well, what do you do? He didn't break a law, and it's
Right.
your neighbor. And so talking about what, because these happen all the time, but what do you do? And do you, as that person, do you speak up because he's your neighbor?
Right.
And I looked at his parcel number, King Count. I looked him up. I'm like, where is he? I know where he lives. I went to his house. I was like, okay, what's his business? How? So anyways, that's something I want to be able to brainstorm on different ideas of what you can do, because this is not a police type situation. This is a community situation.
But I think it's a public thing too, right? If we can publicly start holding people accountable, because guess what? It's 4 inches yesterday. What are you going to do next week? Like, I'm enraged. That's a child in the stroller, baby.
Yep.
What does a baby have to do with anything? What do they have to do with anything?
Yep.
So until we start publicly holding people accountable, they're just going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Like the mean girl in me wants to put a sign on his front lawn that's like,
Yes.
a racist lives here.
Yes.
Yeah. However, it's like, the guy, the Asian couple, how are they going to be safe?
Right.
Right. It's
Right.
retaliation. It's like, and they're not protected. And you're right. It's not a police matter. You know what's sad? It's not a police matter until someone is dead.
Right.
And your life has no value. Like if it were a white person, like you said, and they're in the stroller, that guy would be in jail right now.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me. And that's still going on. And I don't know how to fix it. And that's why this brave space, it gets like, you just want to scream. But it's like, I want to talk about it more, because guess what? I still, even though you said it's not a police, I still would call the police so that it's noted on record. This is a day this happened. This is a license plate. This is where they live. You're not going to do anything, but I want it noted.
Noted.
You understand?
Okay.
Note it.
Yep.
Note it for sure. And that's how it starts. So note it. This happened on this day. And a couple of days later, if he's walking down and he yells out something, call again. Note it. Because guess what? That's harassment. And then also I would say to the local news, if they were white and that were done, would they be arrested? Because they don't like that. Let's talk about the white lens. Let's talk about whose lives matter more than others and what makes the news and what doesn't.
I also want to know why did he do that? What is his problem with Asian people?
Because he's watching the media. He's listening to all of this hate that's put in this country by you know who. And and you know what's sad? I can say there's mental illness. Those are people that are doing it. And then there's educated white Americans that say, you know what, you're never going to be good enough, because guess what? I own this country and your intelligence, your finances make me nervous. So I'm going to try to make you uncomfortable. Maybe so much so that you put your house up for sale and you just move and go away, because that's what we know you do. You're not going to say anything. And that's where the silence says, we're done with that. Mm-hmm. I pay taxes just like you. You don't get to drive your car within 4 inches of my child because I don't look like you. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't.
But what's the root of that? Like, I do think
hatred.
I know, but why? It's like, I remember this with gay marriage, that like, people were so like gays shouldn't be married or whatever. And then it's like, yeah, but it might be different if it was your son or your brother or your sister, like to personalize these things. Like, have you ever talked to an Asian person? You're just going to run them over.
But like you said, some of those people, they don't want to learn. They don't want this brave space. They don't want to sit and talk to us about inclusion and because guess what? Their inclusion means maybe I'm losing something. Maybe my house is devalued. Maybe I'm not going to be looked at as this like amazing person that I put out into this universe, because they're threatened. And when you're insecure, when you have hatred in your heart, that's all it takes, Carrie. It's sad. They don't need a reason. They can't even tell you why they don't like Asian Americans, why they don't like Black Americans, why they don't like Latin American, why they don't like people that are Native American. It doesn't matter, because you're other, and simply you were taught that you were better than. You were treated that way your entire life. So anything that's different than the way you look is simply unacceptable. And your rhetoric and the way you live your life just proves it. Yeah. Meaning those people that won't accept someone who looks different from them. Well, because I'm okay with, and I'm okay if, it's annoying, right? And I'm okay if you don't like me. I don't care if you don't like Black people, but you don't get to disrespect me. Yeah. You don't get to devalue my life and devalue the life of a Black man and a Black child and a Black boy. It's not okay. And that's why
all white people aren't amazing either. It's like,
well, girl, can you let them know that? Because some of them don't believe it. They're just like, I am everything. I can do no wrong.
Terrible.
She said terrible. And that's a news flash. I mean, that should make the news. They should start out by saying, not all white people are amazing. I think it would just be shocking. Like, that should be like a revelation. People, I know you guys don't realize this, but we have news for you. Carrie wants to, we're going to let Carrie let you know.
Well, silly gals.
We got to continue these conversations, though. I love it. And we should have you on our podcast and,
Yeah, that was my plan for the art. Why are people silent? For sure, because that's something.
Yeah.
And my face is turning orange for some reason, but but whatever. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being on the call. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so
Listen,
much. Yeah. Thanks
and
for reaching out and everything.
I
Yeah.
want to end like you've been saying to me. Yes, yes, yes. And that's 3 yeses. There's 3 of us, right? So we're going to
Yeah.
win together. Let's keep the dialogue going. You
Yeah.
found a friend in both Carrie and I, and our heart goes out to you and what's going on. And we want you to know that, listen, if we can be of help, reach out to us. We'll do the same thing. And let's let people know that we're not going to lay down and accept this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's rocking because so I started Asian Allies and Empowered Asians where we can talk about these things, and I need people to come to them and discuss. And yeah, let's keep chatting.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to take a screenshot of us right
Okay.
now.
Oh boy.
Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
When was the last time you felt like this? Has it been a minute? It is time to mix it up. Climb out on those limbs and jump into life. Life is full of excitement. We just need to get curious, get uncomfortable, and go for it.